So, Doc, what do we need to know about stress?
Oh boy. Well, we have a lot to learn about stress, including myself, because you and I, we have stressful jobs, Pastor, stressful positions. And so we have so much that we have to share together on stress. And I have this picture here of a house burning down because this can produce different forms of stress in different people depending on their role when it comes to this house. So if this were your house burning down, you would have distress. I mean, your house burning down it leads to physical and mental anguish.
Hmm.
But if you were, let's say, the fireman who got the call about the house burning, you would have eustress. You would be like, okay, I have to go and help. I have to go out that fire and save some lives. So you are being pushed to do something positive that is eustress. And it's the same event, but different stress response because of different roles and different situations. And let's say if you were the news reporter that had to show this fire on TV, this is something that's, I guess, in the reporter's case, is eustress, right? Because this is helping them with their job to help share information about what's happening in the community. You know, this is something that helps them. So for them, it's eustress. So it depends really on what your role is and the situation.
Hmm.
Now, what are some things that stress us out? I know things that stress me out, Pastor. Um, Trying to multitask can be stressful. You know, I used to love multitasking. You know, I figured out I can do 6 things at one time. But now I realize that I don't like that so much anymore because I get stressed out. If I am trying to, drive and chew gum at the same time and feed the kids and talk on the cell phone, I can't do it. That stresses me out.
Hmm.
So we all have different things that stress us out, and we need to be aware of what that is. You know, we need to spend the time to identify what really stresses me out. Because when you can put your finger on it, then you can actually start to address it.
Hmm.
Now, let's just see what tends to stress out the average person here. Usually, daily hassles, just having to accomplish things like getting to work on time, or providing meals for the family on time, or going to the grocery store, or going to the bank, or having to answer the phone. Those things just add up, and that can lead to stress. Change is a big stressor for a lot of people. I know personally, I'm not a fan of change, but over the years, I've had to realize that change is inevitable. And I need to learn to grow with change. I can't always fight against change or resent change, but I need to grow with the change. The environment can be stressful. And there's not a better example than now. Just our environment, COVID-19 pandemic,
Hmm.
is extremely stressful. We're all responding to this stressor in different ways. You know, some individuals, some patients that I have, some clients, some friends, some family, they are very stressed out just about the thought of potentially coming in contact with the virus. It leads them to a lot of anguish because they don't know what to expect if that should happen. So just the environment that we're in right now is stressful for many. Work is a big stressor for a lot of people. You know,
Hmm.
I don't know how many of us come home and, the only thing that's on our mouths at the dinner table or with the family is what a pain it is to be at work. You know, the boss or the colleague or your assistant or your whoever. They're just stressing you out. Work, nothing seems to work at work. Everything is so dysfunctional. And we just go crazy because work can be a big stress. Finances can be very stressful, especially when you consider the fact that the average American does not have an emergency fund. So when something comes up, let's say their tire, the tire goes flat and they need to replace the tire. Some people cannot afford to get a tire, and that is very stressful. Just not having enough money to cover the month. How does it go, Pastor? The saying that your paycheck finishes before the month.
The money runs out, but the month keeps running.
Yeah, I like it like that. I like the way you say it like that. The money runs out, but the month keeps running. That is so true. And I know many people can relate to that because, in this society that we live in, a lot of times, we just don't seem to have enough funds to do everything that we would like to do. And that's why, Pastor, I really appreciate your efforts to always educate people about finances. I know that one of your big passions is you're passionate about spreading the gospel, but you're also passionate about letting people know how to make their money work for them. I don't know how much of it you've been able to incorporate into the channel since COVID-19, but I know prior to COVID-19, you were always teaching about finances.
Yeah, we haven't worked much in because of the fact that what we use, the software that we use for it is one that is copywritten and you really can't do it on social media. So,
Yes. But that is a major stressor for multiple individuals and families. Also, relationships. Oh man, trying to just deal with someone apart from yourself can be quite stressful. And relationships on the job, at home, at church, in the community, your neighbors, can lead to stress. And then conflict between people, interpersonal conflicts, which I'm sure you're very used to being a pastor. And then there is internal conflicts, the conflicts within your own mind. And we all experience that. I experienced that, always talking to myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice? Was this a good thing to do? And then you kind of stress yourself out just arguing with yourself in your own brain. So there are many things that can stress us out just on an everyday basis. Now, given that fact, should we avoid stress? Should we just try to eliminate it from our lives, not come in contact with it, completely annihilate it? Well, let's see. Stress is additive. The body's response to stress is really the sum of all the stressful situations that we're exposed to. So if you only had one thing that was, a little stressful, it may not lead to a lot of problems. But when you start to have marriage conflicts and then financial problems and difficulty with children's behavior, and the neighbor is fighting with you, when you put those all together, that additive effect is what we want to avoid. Excess stress upon each other. The goal is to manage stress, not to avoid stress. We want to learn how to keep stress within a manageable limit. We have just enough stress to keep us productive, healthy, growing, but not too much stress that we start to get sick and need to have medicine and that limits or decreases our quality of life. I read something in the past that said there are three types of ways that people deal with stress. You have the minimizers, you have the maximizers, and you have the managers. The minimizers are folks who, when something very stressful happens, they tend to kind of try to squash it or minimize it. It's not a big deal, when in fact they deal with major life problems by saying that. So they, instead of handling it and fixing the problem, they just kind of suppress it and hope it goes away. And it doesn't. It just keeps getting worse. So those are the minimizers. Then you have the maximizers. Everything is a big problem. You know those, pastor?
Oh yeah, I know a number of them.
Everything, the sky is falling, and
Yeah.
uh, everything is a disaster, and we are the victims. I am a victim. With that kind of attitude, there's no positive that comes out of the stressor. There's no solution to the problem, because everything is blown out of proportion, and that's not how we want to handle stress. We want to be managers. We
Hmm.
want to objectively observe the problem and figure out, how do we handle this? How do we address it? And how can we possibly fix this? But we want to manage our stress, not minimize or maximize the situation. And we want to keep in mind that stress is not out there. Stress is really in here. It is our response to the situation
Hmm.
and the way we perceive the situation. So that's really the stress or response to it. And I want us to keep that in mind. We have control over our responses to every life event. So even though things may be coming at us, in different forms every day, in different ways, we need to remember always that we are in control, because we control our response, how we will interpret it and how we will behave towards it. Um, and I'm just going to share this stress model with you, before we end or talk, and then I'll let you chime in, Pastor, because you have had many years of experience on dealing with stress. But there's a stress model here that says that you have a stressor. That can be conflict, as we said, before, interpersonal. Um, it could be change, a new boss, a new medical condition that you have to learn to deal with, or a new family member that's coming by whatever means. Or it could be work demand. The work demands are getting increased, and you're just drowning. Or it could be loss of a loved one, a marriage, a job. These things are common stressors, but our responses to these stressors are all very different, and they depend, or they if they happen based on different inherited traits that we have. Some people, when there's a stressor, they tend to, when there's a conflict, they tend to raise their voice and scream. I saw lots of that growing up, in my home. When there was a conflict, everybody screamed, they yelled. That's how they dealt with conflict. So when I got married and we had any conflict, that's how I would respond. I would start to speak loudly. Then I had to realize, hello, that is not how you handle conflict. You have to bring it down, speak softly, be respectful. But because of my experience of seeing that in my home growing up, that's what I had initially brought into my marriage, into my home. And so I had to unlearn that very negative behavior. So our response is based on our experiences or inherited traits. Some of us are very impatient. We're just impatient people. And so we tend to respond that way. Also, our self-image. How we view ourselves. Are we really happy with ourselves? Or are we, not happy with ourselves? That comes across in how we respond to stressful situations. So you have the stressor, or response is determined based on various experiences and traits. But no matter what our past experience has been, we can use coping skills to function better with stress. So we can learn better communication. So like I said, for myself, I had to learn to communicate better with my spouse, not to raise my voice, not to be disrespectful, but to communicate what I was thinking, how I felt, in a calm, adult fashion. Also, our self-talk affects how we handle stress. Are we constantly saying negative things in our heads? I'm no good. I can't do this, or my boss is such a loser. I could do better at this job than my boss. I should be my have my boss's job. Is our self-talk negative? We can change that. We can have more positive self-talk. I can do this. I can handle this change, or my spouse does not really mean anything bad towards me. Assume the best of people. We can learn relaxation techniques. That goes a far way. We've spoken about breathing before, Pastor. Deep breathing, bringing our anxiety down. That can help us respond to stress. And also finding support systems, having better support, bouncing or issues off somebody else, using or resources around us like or pastors. The pastors are excellent resources for support in terms of counseling, guidance, or other spiritual leaders within or bodies of faith are very good. Respected family members, senior family members who we know make wise choices, we can go to them for some guidance and help and counsel. So we need to, not just one person, not just me, not just pastor, but all of us can constantly improve on the way we handle stress. First, we have to identify our stressors, figure out our response, and how can we improve our response based on these different techniques here. Now, when we come back to, actually, I want to do this before we end. I know our time is over, but I want us to look at this questionnaire to see how stressed out are you. And based on that, we'll kind of have a better idea of how we're doing. And then when we come back on Wednesday, we'll talk about what stress does to us physically and what we need to look out for if it's really damaging us. So how stressed out are you? How many stress signals do you have? So let's see here. Minor problems can sometimes seem overwhelming. Is that something that happens to us? Number 2, I feel nervous. I worry about many things. All right, keep a track as to how many of these you can say yes to. Next one, I can't stop thinking about my problems. They're constantly in my head. When I wake up, as I go through the day, I'm thinking about my problems. When I go to sleep, I'm thinking about my problems. That could be a very bad sign there. I feel frustrated or angry most of the time. I feel tense often. I sometimes find it hard to go to sleep, often because I'm worrying, thinking. Or I often feel tired and have very little energy. If these were all negative for you, all of them were, no, 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 that doesn't happen to me. Well, you probably are very busy, but you're managing your stress well. So that's excellent. If you had 2 or more yeses from this box here, then you're stressed out. And we need to keep talking together about how to better manage our stress and maybe some solutions to, to get better and not be so stressed out. So I'm going to stop here, Pastor. I know that this topic is relevant for many, if not most of our listeners. And so I look forward to any questions that folks might have and to coming back on Wednesday to talk more about stress.